off? Do you want to go around do some intros and stuff? What I was thinking was who we are and why we're on a Telegram Marc Clair show chat, like how you ended up there. I'm very curious. Um, I don't know who wants to go first. I feel like Bill is the most official looking person with his
I'm
mic and
official in
headset.
my Sasquatch Hawaiian shirt. Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Sasquatch Hawaiian headset. All right. Oh,
Um, okay, I'll start. That's cool. I first found Marc Clair when I was playing with libertarianism and the Lions of Liberty. Of the three guys, I like to listen to Mark and Brian, and John's good, but at the time it was so depressing listening to his people
who's in
going to jail
jail?
and shit. It was terrible. But as time wore on, I kind of got tired of the big L libertarians, which is kind of like right here for you if you really want to get what down with it. And I don't know how it happened, but Mark and I kind of woke up at the same time, and he got tired of doing his show and he started his new one. And I was following him on his other podcast, the comic book one. And when he
Okay.
announced this one, I decided, hell, I'll give him a couple of bucks. It's just a coffee. So I think I was the seventh supporter that he had for this new show. I've followed Mark for a long time, I guess, at this
Oh
point. Like,
wow.
I don't know, maybe 7 years or something like that. So that's how I found myself there. And then the Telegram group just, well, of course, I have to join that.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
now
I was
I know
like,
you weirdos. So there you go.
there we go. That's well, I guess I can go, but because you said 7 years, like, oh, that's a long time. Then I was like, wait a minute. I think it's for me is 2016. So it was around 7 years
Yeah,
ago.
right about
Uh,
that.
you
Then at least.
so for
Yeah.
to full disclosure, I grew up conservative, Republican household. 2016, I was like, boy, this is not that I just like Trump. It was kind of hilarious. But I was just like, wait a minute here. Is this really what politics is about? Like these two candidates are ridiculous. And so kind of just drifted away from Republican Party, which kind of got in the Libertarian Party. Justin Amash, I was kind of following him a little bit. And he did this interview on Mark Player's show. And that was like one of the first podcasts actually I ever listened to was that interview. Didn't really listen to podcasts. So I just kind of kept listening to them and they kind of grew and then yeah, kind of like you, I followed him over to this show. So that's and then somehow I ended up on this Telegram group. So I don't know. That's my story on how I ended up through Justin Amash in an odd way, I guess. So and now I'm just apolitical and figure out whatever. How about you, hobo mom?
Yeah, so uh I um I started getting into Mark actually it was actually pretty late. So I have been a libertarian for a long time. I've called myself a libertarian. Actually, being in California for as long as I have been in California, I used to always say that I was just an anarchist, and I didn't actually know the time that that was a thing, that there's like, ANCAPs and stuff. I had no idea. I was just like, I don't really believe in government, and libertarian is like a loaded term. So I would always just tell people I'm an anarchist, and people are like, oh yeah, I can relate to that. And then they're all, it was just, but realistically, I was a libertarian and my dad was a libertarian. And then somehow I just started listening. Like I wasn't even much of a listener to podcasts. And then I started listening to like all the libertarian podcasts, like Dave Smith and Marc Clair and Lions of Liberty and all that stuff. And then as COVID kind of just ramped up and got insane,
Mm.
I ended up stopping all of that. I was like, I can't follow this stuff anymore. It was just, yeah, just that kind of abandonment. And then when Marc Clair went off and did his own thing, I was like, yep, that's way more up my alley. I can follow. And now it's like one of the only podcasts I listen to now. Well, did before he took a break with undetermined amount of time.
Yeah, what the heck, Mark?
Yeah.
This will drive him right back to it. Don't worry about it.
I'm sure
Exactly.
this will inspire him.
He's like, I gotta fix this. Like,
Yeah. How about you, Luca?
So I was basically raised to be libertarian by my dad. Um, I he introduced me to a bunch of economic stuff during like 2015, 2016, and so my intro was the Trump phenomenon, and meme culture and all that. And I did the whole like 6 months libertarian, then an anarchist pretty much immediately. So I got to reading Ethics of Liberty and all that type of thing, like within a year or so. And then so I actually my libertarian phase was back then for like a year or two. And then in college, I started out by tactically choosing to identify as just an anarchist because then it's ambiguous and people don't detect you as an enemy. Um, but then I ended up drifting farther and farther. I got into neo reaction, reading Moldbug and stuff like that, and then also Stirner, and have been all over the place. But I listened to Marc Clair a bunch of times during that phase, in which is for me it's like senior year and freshman year of college. And I always remembered him being one of my favorites during my hiatus of like being totally tuned out because I got sick of libertarians back in early Trump years for a while. And then during COVID, I got further disillusioned with everyone but Jeffrey Tucker because he actually did something with the Barrington Declaration. Um, and then when I was graduating college, my friend and I, we had bonded over libertarianism during my freshman year, we decided to tune back into libertarian culture, and that was the post-libertarian moment was happening. And so I like locked in and I started following because everyone was discovering all this stuff that had led me away back during the fizzling out of Trump happening. And so it was really fascinating watching everyone like gradually discover all of the hard right stuff that kind of is a further level of deprogramming in a way. And so then I started listening to Marc Clair a lot more, and then at some point noticed that this chat existed. Now it's become my favorite chat, basically, other than my version of this type of a thing that I've created with my friends. Those are basically the two things that I use the most.
That is quite. This is the most libertarians I've ever spoken to in a single moment. So I don't have a.
You live in San Francisco.
I
So.
do, yeah, I do live in San Francisco. So I'm it's just like uh, it's sometimes it's safer, but I think COVID destroyed libertarians in the eyes of the city. So it's like, no, I
Yeah,
never went as a uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Not education, but like academic as you did, Luca. I don't think on. I'm the normie of the group, as I have said in the chat. So
yeah,
You don't
well,
have to tell us. It's pretty obvious.
what are you talking about here? I gotta, Oh, that you know what? This was not intentional, by the way. I just realized that.
oh, that's amazing.
I did not.
Does it have
Fun
the
fact.
fake island off of
Uh,
Australia? Let's see it.
Fake. Well, fun fact. So I used to live in a small condo building where everyone are Russian. We were the only native English speakers there, and so this older couple knew that I had kids, and they're like, "Oh, we'll give you this globe," and it's definitely I don't know if you can see it, but it definitely has Soviet Socialist Republic on here. It had there it's all backwards, I guess. It has
As it should.
Yugoslavia, so yeah, Yugoslavia is still on here. Wait, there's a fake island off the coast of Australia. Are we talking about New Zealand? Is that a joke I don't get in your
I
world?
don't.
Or
It was a thing I saw from. Oh, geez, what's the name of the movie? Man. All right, all right, all right.
oh, Dazed and
Dazed and
Confused?
Confused. And at the beginning, the one kid they're spinning this globe, and someone pointed out that there was an island off to the west of Australia that shouldn't be there, and I was like, what? So that just happened like 2 days ago.
Oh,
So I didn't get a chance to bring that up in the Telegram group. Sorry. Too busy looking at the moon.
I love
yeah,
that you have the globe Earth behind you and Hobo
yeah.
Mom.
I know. It's like in the battle of the
What?
not the six.
To flat Earth.
Yeah. Well, before we segue to potentially that conversation, I already joked with Hobo Mob that if I can call you that. It's kind of funny saying that out loud, but I said, as I'm sure Mark is a true libertarian, if we do product placement for his Fox and Sons coffee, he'll have to put this up now. So with a promo code MCS guys. So anyway, so no, yeah.
Oh, good job. Way to kiss up. Good job.
Yeah. Well, hey, well, that way, like I said, he has to play it now. So he's like, oh. So we do joke a lot about the Earth and the Moon. I can't get a read on how serious this group is because I'm just that far off. So, but Barb, your map definitely tells me how serious you are about it.
Yeah, I'm really bad at lying.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, I'm really bad at lying. So you may have noticed that from the Telegram group when I say something and then I'm like, actually no. Yeah, I actually do believe that the Earth is flat. That's not a joke.
So, and Bill, where are you at? I can't get a read on you either.
I'm in Washington.
Figuratively, Bill. Figuratively, where are you at?
Oh, I'm in between there. I don't think it's exactly flat, but I don't think it's exactly round either.
Well, that's fair. There are mountains and valleys and like all kinds of like, I don't
Nebraska.
think it's flat in that sense, I just don't think it's like a floating space testicle.
Homo mom's just like, there's no mountains. There's no mountains.
Space testicle?
I don't know. Ball joke. That's all.
Yeah. We'll keep it trying there.
I met someone recently and we came to the consensus of flat Earth shape agnostic.
That's yeah, I think you're probably just like one step away maybe from
Well, I'm like I described it, I'm like a third between three different models.
Oh, okay.
One, like a conventional thing for the most part, but minus the scientific materialist bullshit. And then two is the hollow Earth, because Agartha always sounded way cooler to me than flat Earth firmament, and then it was boring. And then third option is the idea, which I guess this is the flat Earth with a firmament, but the like we're in a realm in between two layers of water. And so it's like kind of a bubble in between, like in a membrane between two layers of water. That's like so cool to me. So I really like that model because it's cool. I don't really Bird from Timeline Earth was talking about this on an episode he did where he reviewed like 6 or 7 different Earth shapes, including Donut Earth. It does not affect me one way or another. So I can't get myself to care too much to stake a claim on anything because it doesn't affect me at all.
It's like the perfect Marc Clair show, like point of view. It's like politics, like whatever, like shape of the Earth.
Yeah,
Doesn't change my job.
I was thinking about this when I was listening back to some of the aliens ones. He was talking about, I think it was Van Danigan, and how he set the format for how the ancient alien stuff always ends up by like guiding you in a certain direction and then asking a question and leaving it open. So they're not they're not making a claim, but they're leaving it open to you.
Oh.
And it occurred to me that I feel like Mark does that a little bit.
Like, could it be aliens? Like, I'm saying it is.
That's kind of what I'm doing. Is I don't care. I can't bring myself to care. But another thing, I really respect as a like from a scientific point of view, the flat Earth position. Because I haven't done the tests. And I think it's really cool that people are devoted enough to it to actually do the science. Because everyone just takes it for granted and trusts the science.
Exactly.
The one, I probably have a lot of questions, Barb, but one is, and this might be kind of pretty basic, but can you explain air travel to me under the flat Earth, or explain to me what the flat Earth is? I listened to one podcast on Marc Clair's show. That's like pretty much my exposure to this concept.
What about air travel?
Like how do you, like if I fly like to Dubai, like or Magellan, like quest around the world, or maybe that didn't happen, but like how did those work in a spherical world? That makes sense to me. You go around. But if it's just a circle, like if you go from here to like, how do you fly around the world without hitting an end?
Right. So the Earth is round, and so you can circumnavigate a flat circle, right? Like that. So you don't actually have to be flying around a ball. In fact, it makes more sense if it's flat because the way that the atmosphere above us would have to be rotating at increasing speeds as the Earth rotates. So as the plane goes up, you're actually going to find more resistance or less resistance depending on what direction you're going. But airplanes don't have that much drastic change in their flight distances. So it doesn't really change anything. You can get anywhere on a flat surface. You don't have to go around the globe. And in some ways, it makes more sense also because if you're flying around a globe, the airplane has to go along with the globe. So they're kind of always would be pointing down to maintain the shape of the Earth. But there are like gyroscopes in airplanes that keep them level at a level plane. And it doesn't change depending on where they are on the other side of the Earth, even though it's supposed to remain stationary to its basically creation point. So it doesn't actually really make sense for it to be flying on a globe. That makes less sense.
So other people hijack in here, but but so are pilots in it on it then in this theory of not theory? I don't want to sound I don't know, whatever. But like, so our pilots, because when you sit on a plane, right, they grab like the map and they're like, oh, like it's actually easier to go over in the Arctic to get over to Europe, right, instead of like cutting across because of the way the Earth globes. So like, are people just like are all the pilots in on it too, or do they don't realize it?
So no, because so much of this is ingrained in people's brains that they don't think that it's unusual that you would be flying flat, not around a ball. It's so some are aware, I'm sure, and some are not aware at all. But when you're in flight school teaches you to assume a level plane. Their manuals say assume a level plane. So fly like you're flying across flat ground. Don't take into account any curvature, and it's going to go just fine.
And I guess it's the argument that
Most
the
of
Earth
the
is
time.
most of the time. Oh yeah, unless you're right now.
Yeah, it's going to go most of the time. Exactly.
Most of the time.
Most of the time. In fact, if you try to take into account any sort of curvature, that is going to cause problems.
And what about constellations then too? Like in the so I guess if you're flat, wouldn't all the constellations be the same? Or I guess not exactly because you're here, and so there's constellations right above you, and over here there's constellations. So I guess it's the same concept as a globe. Is that
Yeah. So if you have the Earth, it's round. Above it,
Flat. The when you look at the maps for the stars, it's flatter like style anyway. So that definitely makes sense. Like it would just be moving around the way that the map does when you're looking to check little cardboard things.
right. So the celestial bodies rotate above the Earth. And again, this is one of those situations where actually a flat Earth model makes more sense, where the North Pole is the center of the Earth. It is the center of the ground. And the North Star is in the sky above that. And everything rotates around it. And you can actually see that you could even do one, you go out and you point your camera to the North Star and everything literally rotates around it. But if we're whirling through space, lobbing around a sun, rotating and shooting through space, that North Star staying exactly where it is, they say, oh, well, it's so far away, so far away. That's why we never see movement in it. But there has never been movement. There are ancient areas and documents that rely on the North Star for sailing, all kinds of stuff. It has never actually changed. It's always been the same star. And, you know, they'll say, oh, well, this North Star is going to change again, that it changes.
I was just
But
gonna say, I thought doesn't it change every like 30,000 years or something?
they will say that, but there's no proof of that. There's no actual proof that it does. And when they kind of again change their narrative very regularly when somebody says, well, that doesn't really make sense. But there's no movement in the North Star. There's no you don't see the North Star wandering. You can go out and you can see the constellations in the same location.
But those wander, right? The
Pretty
constellations, like
they do, they rotate around, but they don't really wander. So you can see the same constellations that people saw 30,000 years ago in the same areas of the sky reliably on the same time of year. So they're not
where's your proof
not like
of that,
wandering off and away. They're all within our vision. So like all the stars are still in the sky. And they're not super off course, even though we're supposed to be like shooting through space.
What was the story of your coming around to this point of view? I'm curious.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
I didn't like I didn't like want to be a flat earther, you know. I wasn't like, you know, I wasn't like raised this way, you know. I feel like I was raised in a cult. It was the cult of the globe Earth. And then I think realistically it like came up once and I was like, that's super interesting. There are some things that are like, I need to look into that. Is that true? That's how it started. It was like you hear something and you're like, is that even true? And then you start looking into it and it's like the explanations, the layers of explanations on both sides. It was like it's really the most logical thing. And so I just kept getting deeper and deeper and there's no going back for me at this point. It doesn't make sense for it to be a ball. I mean, rivers, let me see if I can find it here. So we all grew up knowing that water is flat, like it finds a level surface. Mm-hmm. And so the ocean should be a level surface, but they say, oh no, well, the way that it's all whirling around the ocean is not a level surface. Well, that doesn't, one, you can see it. You can actually go out and see. There's the edges of water aren't starting to curve down. They'll say it's so immensely big, you can't actually detect any set curvature. But as you go up in an airplane, and you look down, you're not seeing curvature. You don't go up in an airplane and the horizon stays with you. It doesn't go below you. So if you're like flying above a globe, you're going to start to see that curvature. You're going to go above it and you're going to start to see that ball below you. But the horizon actually lifts with you. It doesn't disappear or start going down. And let me see if I can find this example. Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, okay, water flowing. Water flows to a lower potential or to a lower level with respect to sea level. So we know all rivers flow down into sea level. Water at rest forms let me actually, find this other thing. I have this book and I was gonna say have an appendix in it, so it's really frustrating. But let me see if I can find it because I wrote my notes and they're not so good. Give me a moment.
You did notes?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I know.
my one go-to on all is like because I remember in high school, which was farther back than it was for Luca, but maybe not as far back as for wildcard Bill over here. But
hey, calm down. That's ageist.
We're libertarians. It's fine. Oh wait, no, we're not. I don't remember now.
Oh yeah, the age of thing. Yeah.
If you really want to derail it, I remember it because there was this myth that like the early explorers were afraid that the world was flat, you just fall off. I don't know, right? We probably have heard that, and then like Magellan proved that wrong, right? But I had associate teachers like, well, if you ever look at like the sculptures of Atlas, the like, Greek god, like he's holding a big ball on his shoulders, right? And so, and those I think date back a long time ago. So I guess when did maybe this is I don't want to derail your water thing, or point, but like when did the Earth become flat, or when did the globe kind of enter in, and like when did that like sorry, let's squash the flat Earth kind of concept, or did people know? Did ancient people know what's the history of that?
Wasn't
But
that Pythagoras?
Pythagoras, oh man,
Yeah, what the
the right angle.
mathematician?
I think Pythagoras was the guy who deduced the size of the Earth by measuring like the shadow between some statue and then walking to Alexandria.
Right, right. And then, or was it Archimedes? There might have been another one there. I don't
Oh
know.
yeah, this
I would
rings a
say about
bell.
ancient Greek is well when I'd say that they came up with the round Earth
Gotcha.
Yeah.
theory.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Yes. Yeah. So it's for most of history, people have believed that the Earth is actually flat, and for a significant portion of that, when they came up with the ball Earth theory, it was not like a conclusive thing. It was like, oh, this suddenly makes so much sense. We all believe it was kind of. It wasn't just adopted immediately.
Those guys are crackpots.
Yeah. But so here's like a little bit from Eric Dubé's book here. This is like a really quick one. It's like 200 proofs or whatever of that the Earth is not round. So rivers run down to sea level, finding the easiest course. North, south, east, and west are all intermediary directions over the Earth at the same time. If Earth were truly a spinning ball, then many of these rivers would be impossibly flowing uphill. For example, the Mississippi, in its 3,000 miles, would have to ascend 11 miles before reaching the Gulf of Mexico. Because it's such a long river, for it to, the height of the highest point, if you account for the curvature of the Earth, means that it would actually have to go up before it started going down again. And the logically, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Another really good example would be the Amazon River. The highest point of the Amazon, I believe it's, yep, the Amazon River is 85 meters above sea level. But it extends. Let me look this up really quick. I had it up.
I'm curious to see what Bill's question is.
Oh, I just the flying over the North Pole makes sense to me if the Earth is flat. But what about when you flip it over to the South Pole? So there's no South Pole?
There's no South Pole.
No South Pole.
There's no South Pole.
So I just when you like going from the end of Argentina and flying around, that's the furthest place you can fly from to get to, you know what I'm saying?
So,
that's
right.
If you take it and flatten it all the way out, then Argentina's clear over here. And to get anywhere, that's as far as you can fly to the north. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Right. Maybe so. I'm sure if I totally understand, but maybe I can kind of explain a little bit. So if the Earth is round, but not spherical, you can get to every point on it, but the south is not, north is a single point in the center.
Yeah.
The south is everywhere around the outside. And it actually logically makes more sense that way. One, there's a compass, for example. A compass always points north. It always points north. And I don't know if you've ever played with a compass with a magnet, but when you have a magnet next to a compass, you can override the north and you can move it around. But if you put it perpendicular like this, then the compass starts going wonky. It doesn't know where to go because it can't get to north. North is no longer along it in a way that it can get if you put it like behind it. So if north is one single point on a globe, as you go down the globe with a compass, it should be confused. It's no longer perpendicular, like it's not in the right orientation to detect north anymore.
Is it? I don't
Yeah,
know
if
if I
you're really far
follow that.
back, then it should be pointing you downward.
Yeah. And as you
So
get
if you're in
all the
Argentina,
supposed South Pole, it's going to try and point up. It's like that would be the closest way, not around the Earth back to north. If it even could, you know, north, the quickest way to north would be straight up if the Earth were a globe.
So the compass should point you down through the ground.
And compasses just don't work that way. But people have been navigating the world with compasses for an immense amount of history successfully.
so I guess not the. I don't know if we can share screens here. Actually, can we? Oh,
Yeah, there should
Give
be
it
a
a shot. What the hell?
host disabled participants. Wow,
Oh,
wow.
oh,
So because I'm just looking, I'm thinking about your Argentina thing, and so if you, I've got a world map, which so if Argentina's here, like how long would it take to fly to South Africa? Because I'm just, can you uh allow us to Miss Host to share?
yeah.
Because
well,
I do think
then you get,
Oh, there you go. Try that. See if that works.
they
beautiful.
don't navigate Polaris in the southern hemisphere either, which
That's
is
true, yeah. Because I mean I
so
did a
feel
stint in
that.
Australia, and you have like
Yeah,
totally
see,
different
everything
constellations.
about this map, though, is not the way the flat Earth orientation is at all.
All right, fine.
Chad, you got
Flat,
around.
flat Earth map. All right, I'll probably just. Oh boy, I probably shouldn't do this on my work laptop. No, here we go.
I would
So
love
this,
thumbs up for that suggestion, flat Earth pizza.
so we've got. So Argentina's way over here, right? I just
Mhm,
keep picking
mhm.
on them. So to fly, like, oh, just visually, this looks super far away to like, versus if it was a globe, they would just like getting to Australia is, I mean, they would just go over the
You
South
just
Pole, right? So
pull
it
it
wouldn't
in,
be,
right? And
Yeah, but
yeah,
it would be
you can't fly over the South Pole, not just because there is no South Pole, but they won't let you fly over the South Pole. There's the Antarctic Treaty. They will not let you go past any part of Antarctica. There's like
What
one part of Antarctica which they allow people to go to, and even then it's like a research base. It's extremely
Mhm.
limited. There, you know, you can go and take like a cruise liner and go see and be like, yeah, that's the pole right there. But they don't let you go anywhere beyond into Antarctica at all. There's a treaty that literally they will stop you if you try and fly in. They will stop you if you try and sail around it, and they'll either send you right home or arrest you. There's like a
That's
ton of
100% true.
nations that all have come together to guard it. So we have no clue what's beyond it. We just are
Or we're
trusting that
preparing
they're telling us what's beyond it is true.
do you have any guesses?
I don't know. I think a whole lot of ice. Probably. I bet it's cold because the
why
sun
is it
doesn't go
cold
that
there?
far.
Oh. So as the
That's
sun moves,
one of the
oh, go ahead.
big Atlantis deals is that it's buried in the Antarctic, which
Yeah.
is always fun to play with.
Yeah. Like who knows? Maybe there's something else way over on the other side, and resources, you know, and that they're trying to keep from us. It's impossible to know.
Or it's
That's where
Jotun.
Marc Clair's at right now.
That's true. He's pretty sus. I think.
Come to
Interesting.
think about it, like maybe the Norse myths are just literally true and like they're giants down there.
I do believe in giants. Yeah, I kind of believe they've obviously been hiding giant.
Oh, that's definitely true. I mean, like that's separately definitely true. Um, I mean, like the Jotunheim in Norse myths with the ice giants, specifically that form of giant. Like maybe that's just what's on the other side of the ice wall. And
Could those ice giants be Nephilim? I mean, has
right,
anyone
yeah,
ever done
Possible.
that? Person?
Possible.
protecting us
Ah,
from
Chad.
That's what they would banish. I'm not saying I disagree with the Nephilim and giants thing. I just am very skeptical still on this. But I did on the Earth thing. But I did. I do think you will appreciate this, especially Bill, because Now I know Mark and some of his people he's had on have talked about the Indian lunar landing and how like that video of like that 3D simulation of everyone's like cheering it on. But
The
if you
flag
but it yeah, but from what I was reading, everyone knew that was a simulation because obviously you don't have a camera on the lander, but there was just like the indication visually of when it landed. So people weren't cheering because they believed that was the landing. So what they want you to think, right? So, but I will say, if you go on the India's website of their NASA, boy, I get flashbacks to like late '90s, early 2000s, and I was like, it's like this is their website, and I went to the gallery, and because presumably, if you look up like American articles, like there's a picture that the India satellite that orbiting the moon right now took of the Apollo landing site. And I haven't gone through all of these photos, but it's not prevalent in any of these photos of like, hey, here we took a picture of the U.S. landing site, which just struck me as odd because I would think that maybe that's the American egocentric view of myself. But I just think like, oh, wouldn't that be kind of something you'd put on your gallery? So I put this out there saying I'm not, totally Mr. Normie over here, but I just, but so question the moon landing. Whether there's actually a spherical moon, I believe there is, but I do also think that their website is a little janky. So anyway, I'll stop taking over here. So
I thought you
yeah, I get
posted a
that.
picture of them landing of the site.
what was that?
I thought you posted a picture of the Apollo 12 landing
Well,
site.
I did on the Telegram chat, but that was from Quora. Like I couldn't find, so I wanted to be like, all right, here's like from an American website, right? Like, hey,
Okay.
look, but I couldn't find it on. I was like, well, what did their website say? And I couldn't find it on there. Not that I did exhaustive research, but like if you look up like under American media websites, like yeah, see, look, India took a picture of our landing site. But if you go over to India's site, it's like they don't mention that anywhere. Like, I don't know. It seems
Oh, okay.
right. Yeah, sorry, that's the point I'm trying to make. I'm just like it's just weird that I don't know. I feel like there should be more pictures of like the lunar lander up there on the moon. It's just
One
bizarre to
would
me
think.
that you would think. So just like so, I am. Well, I'm not 100% in that boat. I'm definitely. I enjoy being very skeptical of the moon landing. How about that?
Yeah. I feel like if you think that the moon landing is possible, then that'd be a good place to start when looking into something like flat Earth, because you're probably not going to get to flat Earth if you still think moon landings happened.
Well, that is true. So
Fair.
definitely fair enough. Fair point. I could see it conceivably in the realm of possible, but did we actually? How many years ago was that now? 60 years ago? Was it
No,
60?
man,
Yeah.
55
All right.
was the year after I was born.
I was like, Bill, please tell me you don't remember the moon landing.
I do not.
It's just really bizarre. Like just the narrative. It's like we went there and then we just stopped going there. It's like, why? Like, really? Oh, sorry.
I heard there's some trippy things about like the astronauts talking about getting water in their boots or something like that.
Oh,
What do you think about that? Space is water. Like rather than space is fake, space is water.
Um, well, my theory on something like that would be that a huge amount of the footage is actually being taken underwater. They actually go underwater to take the footage because that's where it appears that you could be, no gravity. So a lot of that footage is just happening underwater. And you can even find a lot of footage where they say that they're on the like International Space Station and there's like little bubbles coming up from like behind people, like someone like just, took a breath and they got their oxygen mask on. So there's even some evidence to suggest that that's not completely far-fetched. Now, I don't know how much footage they've taken of
Huh.
moon landings and water necessarily, but it makes you wonder. be a good environment for it. You can kind of swim and float through.
Yeah. What do you I guess presumably Agartha and Hollow Earth is incompatible with Flat Earth, but why why should I go with Flat Earth when Hollow Earth sounds more fun?
It does sound more fun. Yeah, I don't know. I guess you can follow your heart on that if that's what feels right for you.
Well, I want you're I feel like you're an expert on the subject of Earth shape, and I'm an agnostic. So like,
Right.
what are your thoughts on the Hollow Earth thing?
I don't see how it can be hollow. You know, we've dug in a lot of places quite deep. I mean, I think the deepest hole they've ever dug is like 8 miles deep or something like that. But it's kind of just getting like harder and denser, not hollower. But I don't see how it can be compatible. Like, I don't see how a flat plane could really be hollow. And, you know, Earth being, you know, basically dirt, terra firma, it doesn't add up to me that it's hollow.
The
my count. Oh, go ahead.
part of the reason why it's compelling to me is combine this with another thing, the abiotic oil theory from Russia. Um, it and the like hollow but somewhat conventional model of the Earth, and then you'd be visualizing the Earth as an organism um with geologically reproducing like blood flow sort of thing, like a Gaia theory type thing with the abiotic oil regenerating, because that's what they found in Russia, which I think might be part of why Russia's in such a good position geopolitically, which is interesting. Um, but yeah, the abiotic oil theory thing is really cool. And the idea of a hollow earth is just fun to me. And the Agartha stuff, there's fun collages on like TikTok reel type stuff. And so that's all compelling. And the story about the guy who just happened to fly into Agartha and then like crashed and then met all these weird people and like people who live inside and like all this stuff is just cool. Um, and so this idea of the abiotic oil being the blood of the earth organism, and then inside are these ancient like human related species just sounds like a cool model. I basically I'm wondering if you in the researching of the earth shape, if you had delved into these other models and what interesting things there are and compare and contrast, because this is the type of thing that I look for in these earth shape discussions.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely sounds like, I mean, it's interesting, and I haven't delved in a ton. I've like, you know, read a bit about it, but as far as beyond it kind of just being like maybe interesting, I don't know. Maybe there are other worlds out there. Maybe it doesn't have to be a hollow earth. Maybe uh those kinds like the yeah, like Atlantis, like these lost lands that exist with passageways that we don't really have access to. And that's maybe how it was explained and to someone, or it made sense to them in the way that they got there, got back, and who knows. I have no idea. I don't think it's hollow per se. I don't think it's compatible with what I believe, but I do think it is interesting. And aside from it kind of just being something that's fascinating, I don't I can't like um pick it apart like I can ball earth, you know, like, oh, well, they say with a hollow earth, it's got to be this. I mean, aside from it being possibly a ball, which makes no sense, that's incompatible with what I believe.
I guess
What is
I would.
Bill?
Well, I wasn't saying nothing.
No, I mean what are your thoughts?
Hollow Earth just makes me think of Land of the Lost. So there's that.
True.
The original one that I grew up on way before you guys were born.
Hey, no. Where it's around the world, and is it no Journey to the Center of the Earth, right?
Journey to the
Well,
Center.
isn't Yeah,
that's it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Although
Jules
Jules Verne,
Verne.
right? Apparently he's a conspiracy or an elitist or something like that. I've heard someone on one of the podcasts, and I was like, wait, Jules Verne? I read him when I was younger, and I thought, he's planting stories in our minds. But they journey to the center of the earth, and they
Around the World in 80 Days and
well, yeah,
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, I
and
believe.
War of the Worlds too was him too, right? Right? No, that's
No,
H.G. Wells.
He
Never mind.
Wells.
Sorry, my bad. My bad. I was going to say though, from an interesting standpoint, Luca. Not that I believe that there's aliens or other life forms out there, but I would think that the normie of like there's an infinite world out there of like places that maybe one day you could space travel to is also cool. But again, not that I really believe that aspect of round or global Earth hobo mom, but just just throwing it out there. You needed some enticement. Just think of like Star Trek or Star Wars, right? Like that not possible, I don't think, with a flat Earth worldview.
It isn't?
I don't
Except
know.
for
Actually, that's a good point. Is it? I don't know. Well, correct me. Are there?
I
Can
don't
we
know if
have
that's
Star Trek in your world?
possible. It seems so untenable in our normie physics world. Like they pretend like it is, but it really doesn't seem very plausible within the mainstream paradigm of how the cosmos works. I feel like these alternate interpretations might have more loose interpretation for like what might be possible.
Space travel is only possible if there's no space. Is that what you're? Sorry.
Inside every hollow Earth there or every hollow planet, there's a portal that you can transmit yourself to. That'll be fun. I think that's how one of the Mario games works that way.
Is that
You're
Galaxy?
right.
Maybe that was a revelation of the method.
Yeah, Mario. Oh, that's excellent.
Oh boy.
I just read this book called Forever War. It was written in 1972-ish, I think, by a guy who was in Vietnam, but it's in the future, and they use this their space travel is they rely on these, I think they call them gateways. But what it does, it just accelerates you to like 0.99% of light speed. So, and why it's called Forever War is this guy enlists right when they're attacked by somebody that they really weren't attacked by. So it was a thing on the Vietnam War. But at any rate, when they do all this traveling, when he comes back to Earth, his mom and dad that he left when he was 18, she's like 90 now, and he is only in the service for like a total of I think they call it relative times, like 5 or 6 years, but 2,000 years go by or something like that. And the whole time that this war is over. So every time he goes out to another place, he comes back and the whole world's changed. It was an interesting book. It was kind of really cool. It's like, yeah, I don't fit in anywhere anymore, but the time travel thing is what made me think of that.
Ender's Game is like that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I forget about Ender's Game. Yeah.
Yeah, they discover time travel, and then like what is it? The Readers of the Dead. Like there's a bunch of sequels, and that's what time travel. They like lose hundreds of years every time they do travel.
I think they discover interstellar travel, and a side effect of that is acceleration of the passage of time.
Yeah.
Like there's some kind of thing that connects everything, and they can tap into that. I forget. It's been a while since I read it, but I've realized that was not descriptive. And for those of you who aren't watching our lovely video stream, it's I made
With a very Italian twist.
He did
not
this with his
Italian.
hands.
I did this, guys. For those of you listening, this is what I did. It's funny because I never watched YouTube videos or anything like that. I just listen to podcasts, so they'll always be like, "Oh, for those of you listening, I was like, that would be me." I don't know, maybe I'm in the minority on that.
No, I only listen also. I never watch. I've watched a couple of Mark shows just so he could get another uh like and view on it, but I'm already listening to this, so I just let it play in the background.
That's true. I did jump in on a couple of his live streams. It like happened during, I think I was going to pick up my son. I was like, I'm just driving. I'll do a live one of his live shows. And actually, I was chatting. I was like, "Oh, I got a shout out." I was like, "This is kind of cool." I feel like,
Well, I will add that of all of the Marc Clair shows to watch, this one's really important. It's got some extremely important visuals.
yes, yes, you need to watch this
Makes
show.
way more sense if you watch it.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I think like every commentator has been like us commenting on. Oh, have you seen this? Well, let me steal the share screen here and show you some Indian pictures. So, yeah, apologies for all the people listening who couldn't see any of that.
I think the people that are going to be listening to this are going to know exactly what you're talking about when you said the Indian lunar lander.
Just envision a GeoCities website, and that's what the Indian NASA is.
Oh my
I
god!
had one of those.
It didn't even cross my mind that we spent like 3 minutes looking at pictures of the moon.
Yeah, I know. I did until just now. I was like, oh, it's like
Alleged moon. Come on,
yeah.
people.
Oh yeah. I'm like, let me show you this, guys. For all the listeners out there, I'm holding a globe up to the camera and showing you how it says USSR. So yeah, yeah. So, whoops, sorry, Mark.
Rewind to aliens for a moment. I've been thinking about this. I'm a huge aliens hater. I think aliens are fake. But my brother or my half brother, um, he was talking about aliens now because they're rolling it out as something acceptable to think. And so I was talking to him and I've been trying to like delve into that like outer layer of conspiracy world that I'm not really tuned into to see what they're talking about. And so I found these interviews with the Blink 182 singer Tom DeLonge. I don't really know the band. I don't know if I've ever listened to a song, but I remember like it's the band that the emo girl in high school liked.
Oh my gosh, wait, how young are you, Luca?
I'm old and I know Blink 182. Come on. All the small things. Come on.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't like them, but I knew them. Like,
Yeah.
damn it.
What decade are they from?
Oh my gosh, the 90s, right?
90s, I think.
Late 90s. That was on the bus.
90s,
we used to listen to a lot of radio.
Yeah.
Oh my
I
God.
grew up with all the old rock, but I didn't get a lot of that middle era after grunge had kind of tapered off until
Oh yeah, that's when they were.
other
Yeah.
high when the indie rock came into the picture. So yeah. Anyway, the lead singer,
Why are we talking about him?
lead singer, aliens guy, and he started a podcast he wrote a book, and he's been super into his whole life. And apparently, a bunch of like CIA guys have contacted him, and then they basically were like, "Hey, you want to be our spokesperson?" And so then they did some like disclosure through him or something. So I've just been trying to figure out what's going on. It seems like the center of the alien psyop to me, but it's also really interesting to me that across all these conversations I'm finding about aliens, they're all strictly scientific materialist assumptions about things. And I was thinking about how aliens and Nephilim, and if you're like a Gnostic New Age type, then archons all sort of serve to explain certain holes in the accepted narrative reality. And since like the internet's just creating so much access to information, we're all learning about things about history that don't make sense unless you add some pieces. And so people with different worldviews are choosing different things to be a stand-in for that function. And I feel like aliens is the atheist one for a whole slew of things that we talk about as Nephilim or spiritual entities and stuff.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I could see that. Yeah.
It makes
So
sense.
you're saying that aliens are what the atheists go for, and like the religious people go for Nephilim? Is that? Are you saying they're equivalent? I guess is what I'm asking.
It's literally the biblical narrative. So yeah,
it's like an
okay.
well, if you got evolution, it's like, well, obviously there's all these, right, as we've clearly established, there's infinite worlds out there. So clearly there's aliens, and clearly they have they're advanced, and so they can do crazy stuff. And so anything that's hard to explain, which I would pull up the meme, but I won't do it for the listeners, obviously. But they're like,
Oh, you
is
should.
aliens,
You should totally
right?
pull them
Yeah.
up for the listeners.
So, and you said something else too that was about aliens, but it is. Well, I think your whole point of aliens used to be the sci-fi, like clearly sci-fi, right? And it was like weird if you really believed in it. And now it's just I had an awkward moment at work where someone during the eclipse. So I was in Cleveland for the eclipse actually, so I got to see the total eclipse. I'm not sure actually how you explain that, Hobo Mom. Well, so what are eclipses? I guess.
Oh, that's
easy.
Oh, what an
That's easy.
All right, Bill. What is it then?
But it's the same thing. The flat moon goes between the flat Earth and the flat sun, and you still get the eclipse.
Are they like like flat, like they're like
They're on different planes.
Oh.
Yeah,
Nope.
yeah. They just just like that. Just like that.
That's how the world ends.
Oh, and for the people that aren't watching, I just went like that.
There was a lot of gesticulation in the past 30 seconds. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah. Okay. Well, eclipses, if you want to take a quick sidetrack, I don't know if anybody else wanted to add to what was said before, but eclipses are actually really easy to explain because the celestial bodies are all above the Earth. But the one thing that is important to remember is sometimes there have actually been eclipses that have existed where the sun and the moon are actually both visible in the sky at the same time. So lunar eclipses where the sun and the moon are in the sky at the same time. But when that happens, you're supposed to have the sun, the Earth, and then the moon. So the Earth's shadow is eclipsing the moon when you have a lunar eclipse. But that doesn't actually make sense. They're in the sky, and the way that they rotate, there have been a ton of depictions historically of basically another celestial body. It's like a dark sun. And the eclipses have been, people have known when they were going to occur well prior to there ever being the idea that the Earth could have been spherical. So this whole well, we predict them now. They were predicting them long, long, long ago. And the way that basically the cycle of the moon and the sun over the sky is predictable enough. But there's what is it? Rahu, the black sun. Sorry, it's after midnight here, so my brain is shot. But,
we got
Rahu, the black sun, is a third celestial body, and that eclipses the sun and the moon periodically in the sky. So it's not a shadows situation. You're talking about something else blocking it.
Not to keep going back to flat Earth, but maybe my last question is: do we know that I'll say ancients did not view the Earth as a globe or as a sphere?
How do you mean?
Well, you just said we now can predict things, and we say it's because we know, but they've been able to predict celestial movement 10,000 years ago or whatever, right? But did they think the Earth was flat back then, or did they also think the Earth was round? Round being a ball. So
it was a really, I think, radical idea that the Earth was a globe. That was a very radical concept. That is not something that was
the Mayans didn't think the Earth was a ball.
Right.
I don't think.
Right.
I don't know. Bill seems for those of you listening, Bill has a dubious expression on his face.
Yeah. I'm actually I don't know. Did the Mayans think the world was spherical? I don't know that.
I don't know if I can say specifically the Mayans, but depictions of the Earth and maps of the Earth have existed flat for far longer than there is ever any sort of notion or demarcation that a flat map would have actually been some sort of curved representation.
Right, until we talk about, you get to Atlas and the Greeks, and that's why I was like, geez, I've never really thought about the Mayans ever thinking that the world was a sphere or flat or whatever. Never thought of that at all. So Mesoamerica. I don't know.
Yeah.
That one actually confused. I'm thinking hard on that one. That's an interesting question.
Yeah. Yeah. I, as far as I know, there's not depictions of like a globular Earth
So the Greeks.
in like far, far back history. And there have been maps. There's tons of maps, flat maps, that are actually extremely accurate, super accurate, eerily accurate compared to, you know, what you would think.
What about like satellites, like geocentric? What is it called? Orbit when you
They're stationary, synchronous.
yeah, this. Thank you, geosynchronous orbit.
So they're stationary. So what difference would that make
Damn,
if
wow.
the world's flat or a sphere?
Yeah, but
If
you
they're
know,
stuck,
like this.
if they're even up there, I'm just saying.
Well, I was just gonna say, so we don't have satellites. Then. So, yeah, well, yeah.
And I think it's something like NASA is the largest consumer of helium than any entity out there. They purchase and consume more helium than anything
They
else.
just talk like this.
Yeah, yeah, that's why they all talk. Yeah, so they
Damn
do
nerds.
launch a lot up into the sky using helium, and there's tons of balloons up there floating, but helium is gonna float.
I'm gonna have to fact check that. Google.com.
Google's not gonna tell you anything.
uh,
All right, so I mean, a couple other things. When a lot of people say the horizon, when you look and you see a ship disappear over the horizon. Oh, it's because it's disappearing over the curve. But if you have a high enough powered lens, you can zoom right in and bring it right back into view. And there are tons of accounts of being able to see very, very, very far in the distance. So if you're on one, if you can see islands and land. There's instances of ships being able to see land 150 miles away, even lighthouses. You can see lighthouses very far away. And if the curvature is going, it's something along the lines of 8 inches per mile squared. So for each mile, because it's not a linear line, it's a curved line. So it's 8 inches per mile squared that it's supposed to be going around to be able to make the circumference of 24,000 miles around. And if you can see a lighthouse on the water 50 feet ahead of you, it should be, even if you're up, like if you're up on the top of a ship, on a tall ship, and that lighthouse is, say, 100 feet high, it should still be 200 feet under Earth. You can't look through the Earth. But people see lighthouses, and ships have been navigating with lighthouses for a very long time, and being able to actually document. There's documented visuals of being able to see the light from way further away than they should be able to see it.
Pulling up a flat Earth map, and I'm just like, well, so in theory, then you'd be able to look all the way across an ocean to land that's
there is
on
still
the other side.
perspective. So there's still perspective. There's a visual perspective. So, when you're on a really, really, really flat road, a level road, a perfectly level road, and there are lights lining that road, they're all, let's say, whatever, 15 feet high. As you look down that road, they're getting shorter and shorter and shorter because there is still a visual perspective, but that visual perspective, that horizon line of your visual perspective, everything's going to converge to that. So everything at the top converges down with the way your eyes work, converges down. Everything from bottom converges up, and the sides converge in. And that's why it looks like lights are getting shorter and shorter and shorter as you look down a street.
Didn't the Greeks invent perspective, though? So I don't know now. I don't know if I trust this. No. I was trying to be funny, Bill. Sorry.
I don't have any perspective. I don't know.
A lot of perspective on this recording.
Hobo Mom just, the vanishing point. As you look down a road, and I've done it, you look and it just disappears. And I was up, the road was down. So it doesn't matter if the world's round or not at that point, because I'm looking down on the road disappearing. and then rising back up. So Arizona. I was in Arizona, just so anyone cares to know. The Navajo reservation.
Won't ask why, but
I just wanted to go see a rock, but I'm kind of weird.
for those of you listening, we're shaking our head. No, Bill. No. Well, it is 12:30. I don't know, 9:30 our time though. Well,
Yeah.
actually, Luca, where are you?
It is also 12:30 for me.
Oh, I like the cryptic
Got two
response.
Easties and two Westies.
I'm in New York. I wasn't
Oh,
I'm gonna tell you.
I want just when I said atheist, I should have said scientific materialist, like the people who trust the science as their religion.
There is so many holes in that. Can we do a quick evolution tangent?
sure.
I've realized
I
we might be.
hear about the respectful parenting thing. I
Oh
looked
yeah. Screw this. Yeah.
on
Hobo
the
Mom, bring us home with your. We'll do plugs. I don't really have anything to plug. Turn it over to Hobo Mom.
Um, okay, I don't actually really want to plug my
uh,
podcast, anything that I do. I mean, if you find it great, but it is not something I'm going to be talking about flat Earth on. I understand how people view that. I don't need less listeners. So, yeah, I believe in respectful parenting. I believe it is wrong to coerce children and try and manipulate them to get you to do what you want them to do. And I'm really passionate about it.
Is that as someone who I have a 5 and 2-year-old that resonates with me, that idea of like not trying to trick them or lie to them. I think of like I've read certain rye books or um I guess kind of Montessori, but like kind of is that play into that kind of concept, and maybe you could
Absolutely.
explain that to the listeners who don't read parenting books.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so RIE, yeah, resources for infant educators would be RIE. That's a Magda Gerber. She had this idea basically to treat infants like humans from birth, and um, and don't coerce them. And that includes not just like not hitting your child, which seems like a no-brainer to me, but it still exists. People still hit their children and spank them. But that only makes kids more likely to hit themselves. So you're going to actually, kids are going to be more aggressive if you're aggressive towards them. But I also am completely against rewards. So I actually am against trying to give kids M&Ms to get in their car seat or whatever it is, because you're manipulating them. You're trying to manipulate their behavior, and eventually kids see through it. And so you have to kind of keep upping the ante, and it doesn't work. And that's not how relationships work in real life. You don't try and bribe your partner. And if you do try to bribe your partner, then you should probably take a closer look at how you're have your relationships with people. So I try to be really consistent with my values, and that extends from, everyone that all my friends, to my partner, to my children. And it doesn't make it different. They're still humans, and yes, they're dysregulated and they have really challenging moments, but it doesn't mean that it's okay for us to coerce them to behave the way we want them to behave.
I could have used you like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I've always loved this. You mentioned something about it's crazy how libertarians talk about non-aggression all the time and then don't extend it to this. It has been like a little hovering subculture attached to it though, and I've loved that that's always been there. Um, I've always loved all the way that this sounds, but there is something that a lot of mothers that I've talked to who are in like homeschooling adjacent communities talk about the permissive hippie style of parenting and the problems with that. And that one of the things I found when I was looking this up is it differentiates from that. Do you want to talk about how you differentiate respectful parenting from hippie permissiveness?
Yeah, absolutely. Permissiveness is just as bad. Kids, if you parent in a permissive way, kids do not, especially young children, they cannot do well in an environment where they have too much freedom because they don't understand the risks of life. So what it is being able to give like really good guidelines, being a confident leader for children. So you don't just let them run out in the street and you're not trying to negotiate them like, you're not going to try and negotiate with them not to run out into the street. You're going to be like, oh, but don't do that. It's not good for you. It's really unhealthy. Or like permissive parents will try and talk their children into things. And it doesn't work that way. So it's very different. What it is a not authoritarian style of parenting, which is it's my rules, my house, and that's where it begins and ends. And it's not permissive where it's like, let's just I'm gonna take into account everything that you want and do whatever you want. It is an authoritative style of parenting where you can have children can have influence. And they can there are certain things you try and give them as much freedom as possible, as much autonomy as possible, while simultaneously also knowing this certain decisions are not up to them. And then it is absolutely the adult's responsibility to make sure that that happens. So any rule that you do make in the house has to be one that you can enforce. So you can't have rules against things like language. You can't control what another person says. So if you're like, we don't use that word in this house, well, that doesn't make sense because the children just used that word in the house. So you can't stop them from speaking. And if they're using those words, realistically, if you don't use them, they'll stop using them. And they might have picked it up from a friend, but they're going to stop using it because of just what happens inside the home. So it has to be a rule that you can enforce. Like, I'm not going to let you go into the cabinet and get whatever you want out of the cabinet. That's a fine rule. But if your kid's going into the cabinet and you're going, oh, remember, we're not supposed to go into the cabinet. If they're still going into the cabinet because they're a 4-year-old and they have no impulse control, it's the adult's responsibility to walk up and physically stop them. I'm not going to let you go into that cabinet. And you physically stop them from going into the cabinet. So it's a lot of people get confused and a lot of people will say, oh yeah, I'm a respectful parent or peaceful parent. And the way that they parent ends up being permissive, but it's giving kids too much control in things that realistically actually can make them feel unsafe. It is natural for kids to try to push boundaries and if you have really like elastic boundaries, they never really know what the rules are. So they're going to continue to try and push through. Where if you have very rigid, specific, clear rules and boundaries, kids actually feel it's like guide rails on a bridge. If you're going across a bridge or walking across a bridge and there's no guide rails, you're like, oh, okay, that's a little scary. But if there's like a very clear guide rails, you're like, okay, I'm confident I can get through. So kids need those guide rails. And that's our job as parents. And then we give them as much autonomy in every situation that we can in the circumstances that we can. Free play would be a good one, especially for young children. Like we shouldn't be controlling the way that they play.
You mentioned this, there was a study that at a daycare or something like that, where there was no fence and it was like all the children kind of played right kind of close to the door. And then they put in a fence to outline the yard. And then the children started playing out farther from, where the caregiver was. And the idea was a boundary because kids need that because otherwise they get, like you said, they're young, they still need some guidance, but you give them a safe place to freely play in. So like that study I read, there's a book called Easy to Love, Difficult to Discipline. I think it talked about that. And in that book, like the very first paragraph, my cousin is a family therapist. He recommended the book. And basically the book is like a trick. It's like, you think you're going to read about how to deal with kids. It's like, actually, you just need to, if you want your kid to act a certain way, you need to change yourself. Like you mentioned that, Bobo Mom. And it's like, if you need to model the behavior you want, it's like, okay, so I guess I got to change. Fine. Like, oh.
I remember from back when I was a little teen kid youngling, like on the side of the not like if I was a kid seeing another kid misbehaving, I would let it slide, like Team Kid. Um,
Mm.
like it's wild to me, or it was at that point wild to me that the adults just think that the kids don't see through it when the rules don't make sense or when they're total hypocrites about the rules. And it has always been mind-boggling to me that adults think that that is going to work, that the kids will follow them. And it always seemed to me like, what did they just like grow up and
Uh,
think that adults are
just
like at
forget.
some point? And I feel like those of us who look at it this way are just the ones who didn't forget growing up. Bullshit rules and bullshit makes you not want to follow them. Like it seems so simple and common sense to me.
I've totally been caught in that myself.
Yeah,
No,
it definitely.
I can't believe I just said that.
Parenting is hard for sure. I won't put it out there, but that's great. People like you, Hobo Bob, who it's good. So to remind us about that and teach us on those types of topics, because my son is very he pressure tests all boundaries and stuff constantly. It's like you have to be consistent. It's like nope, we don't do this, because once you're like, well, today we'll do it, then it's like tomorrow. It's like, well, what about? It's like, oh my gosh, like no, it's like it's like anyway. So
I also experience like toward the permissive and not really permissive, but like more toward that direction. And like this idea of authoritative, consistent rules just sounds so appealing to me, even as like someone with such an anarchist personality.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I mean, again, it's a tricky thing. It's a really tricky thing because I still give my kids so much freedom. Like a lot of people might even see me out like at parks or playgrounds and think that I'm a super permissive parent because I don't have rules that it's not their rules. So, my kid might be like running up a slide and I'm going to let him run up the slide. I'm not going to stop him because there is no said rule about going up or down slides. If they're like getting in somebody's way or knocking someone over, I'll stop them. That's you don't hurt somebody's physical body.
that's a
But
nap violation.
Yeah, nap
yeah,
violation. Yeah.
yeah. And so
You're out of the party.
totally, yeah. And so
Punishment
it goes
from
kind of like this full circle, absolutely, where yeah. But permissive is tricky. And if you're too strict, then kids are just they want to break out of that as fast as possible. And you just got to understand as a parent what you really do have control over. There's a lot we just don't.
That's very true.
Yeah. Empathy is a huge piece too, because I think that's maybe something I didn't mention. It's a huge piece too, because even if your kid is upset about something that you think is absurd or ridiculous or in your mind wrong, it's real to them. And so I think empathy is really a huge piece of it. So, my kid might be really upset that we have to go home because he keeps doing dangerous things. And instead of being like, well, you deserve it, that you deserve to go home. You've been bad today. I approach it from a point of empathy. I'm like, whatever, my kid doesn't actually understand all of the world yet. It's like, you really wanted to keep playing. You really wanted to keep pushing people. It's not safe. I'm not going to let you be unsafe with your body. So, but I hear you. I hear you really want that. Yeah, that really sucks. We have to go. And being able to connect on that level with another human, that's what builds trust. And that's what you're really going for, because you want a kid not to feel too much shame, because they'll get older, they'll grow out of all of that. But when they're adults or when they're teenagers, you want them to be able to go to you with their problems. When the problems are really big, they don't want shame and judgment when they have friends that are doing things that they think that you might get mad at them for. So you really like that empathy piece of being like, I accept you fully and wholly for who you are as an individual. And I'm just here to like guide you. And I can like just be a listening ear, even though I'm the one that created a rule that's really upsetting you, I can also understand that you're really upset, and that's okay to be upset.
It's great to hear, and it's good constant reminders of someone, like I said, who has young children. I'm like, yep, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, my kids are all older. You're just talking about all the mistakes I made. Thanks. Great. Perfect.
Every
Like,
parent
Now I
makes
get to
them.
be a
No,
grandfather though, so who
you're
cares?
not alone. That's okay. I yell at my kids sometimes. I do things I'm not proud of. We all do. We get to learn
No.
from it though.
Yeah, it is. I think, and that's another thing too. The lesson is like forgiving yourself, because that's another thing you model too. It's like, hey, I messed up. Like I shouted or whatever. You know, I overreacted. Um, and it's always funny when like, Dad, you overreacted. I'm like, oh, thank you.
Yeah. That.
My arrogance.
But you didn't die, so I kept you
Yeah,
from
yeah,
dying.
exactly.
But you
Remember that. Yeah.
Still, well, did I don't want to. I might jump off here. I don't want to end it
Yeah.
too early, but
Yeah, I should too.
Oh, we've been. I've got a recorder going. We're like 123 right now, almost an hour and a half. So,
Awesome.
and
smoke
that's a little
filled
bit of,
room. You know.
yeah, we got a little bit of pre on there, but so we're easily over an hour.
I'm sure once you cut out some of the blank space and like, no, I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
once you do all the edits, you know.
Just,
Take out all
I
the stuff
cut
that
out
doesn't make
everything Chad
sense.
said. It'll
Yeah.
be really.
My words and the visuals. It'll just be the wise words of Hobo Mom and Lucas'
Yeah,
great
exactly.
questions.
We're gonna cut this down to about 15 minutes. It's just gonna be the world according to Hobo Mom. And spoiler, it's flat.
And cut in clips explaining all the gestures every time we go like a
Yeah.
Well, we could do a follow-up too. I've got more.
Yeah, this was fun,
My
guys.
brain's more
that
functional.
evolution tangent that you asked for, Chad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we don't.
should
Yeah,
do
that's
that.
a tangent that we don't need to. Yeah, that'll be the next time we do it. So.
I've got some tangents, but they're tangent, which just proves the world is not flat. I'm everywhere. You can't lock me down on anything.
That's good. All right. Well, for everyone who's watching, don't forget to buy your Fox and Sons coffee. For those of you listening, buy it. But I'm going to sign off, gentlemen and lady.
All
Sorry.
right. It was a lot of fun, guys. It was really, really a lot of fun.
This was
Yeah,
a lot
what?
of fun.
Thanks
Thank
for doing
you
it.
all. It was so great.
Thanks for the Zoom. All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye, guys.